Good morning. Happy Thursday. It's hump day. We're almost done with the week. I'm very excited to share with you some of the things that I've been learning. Today is a recap of Philippians 1. There will not be a video tomorrow morning. I'm going to be actually traveling for a funeral for my mother-in-law. So pray for me. But today we're going to wrap up Philippians 1. I'm just going to go through some of the things that I've learned or things that have stood out to me. I hope you'll do the same. And then on Monday, we will begin our week 3, which will be a focus on chapter 2. So let's dive right in. Philippians 1, what an amazing chapter, and just chock full of things that we can learn from and apply to our own lives. Right out of the gate, I just want to say, Paul is not an absentee father. He could have just easily said, there was this little town, or this big town that I went through. I think the name was Philippi. I was there years ago, and I met a few people and started this church. And then, years later, he could have just been an absentee father and not really kept up with them and not really had much concern for them. But Paul is a very involved spiritual father. And so he was there for the conception of the church, and he continues to be involved in a very intimate way in the church. Paul is a community builder. Right out of the gate, at the first of the chapter, he includes Timothy in his greeting. Have you ever met someone that they could very easily take center stage and just it be all about them, but they're continually bringing people along with them, emphasizing other people's involvement in the process instead of them taking center stage. So he includes Timothy in his letter, and he doesn't want to be just center stage by himself. He's actively including the person that he is pouring into, which is just a whole nother lesson in of itself. His life is about other people and connecting them with the gospel, and then teaching them to be worthy of a life, worthy of the gospel, living a life worthy of the gospel. And one of the biggest ways that he talks about doing that is through their unity and how important their unity is in the defense of the gospel. There are things that tear down the gospel. When we live a life that is not worthy of the gospel, it impacts our ability to be a testament to people. When we live a life worthy of the gospel, then the gospel spreads. And I think Paul is trying to emphasize that in this first chapter. Paul understood that though he may have had a part in planting these seeds, God is the one that's going to make them grow. Remember in Acts 16, when we learn about the steps of how Paul got to Philippi and how the church was started. Remember, his first convert was Lydia, and God just opened her heart for Paul's message. And then, soon after that, he was thrown in prison, and the earthquake happened, and the jailer was converted, and the whole entire jailer's family was converted. But the first conversion was a kind of a quiet conversion. God just opened her heart for Paul's message to sink deeply into her. And that was a conversion that just kind of happened quietly. They were just talking and she got saved. But the second conversion was an earthquake, literally. But they were both miracles because God opened both of their hearts to receive the message of the gospel and to receive Christ. And so Paul understands that no matter what kind of conversion someone has, he was there for both. God is really the one working behind the scenes to open people's hearts and to bring them to himself. He's reconciling people to himself. It's Christ. It's Jesus that's doing that. And Paul understood that. Paul understood that, when the first chapter says that he was confident that God was going to perfect the people, that he who began a good work in you is going to perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. He understood that not only was God responsible for the conversions, but that he was going to perfect people. And that should bring us great comfort for ourselves as well. One of my favorite t-shirts that I've ever seen, I want to get one. It says, "Be patient with me. God's not done with me yet." And if you are living and breathing and on the planet on this side of heaven, God is not done with you yet. He has great plans for you, and He is perfecting your faith. He is perfecting you until the day of Christ, which is either for you the day that you pass away on this earth or the day that Jesus comes back. Either of those can be the day of Christ for you. But we know that God is perfecting us, and that should bring us great comfort. Let's see, prayer. Paul brings up this thing of prayer several times. Prayer is essential in a powerful life. You cannot have a powerful life unless you have a powerful prayer life. And not just any prayer, but prayer that is grounded in a thankfulness, prayer that's grounded in joy, and prayer that is specific. You know, a lot of times when I'm praying for people, I'll say, you know, Lord, be with so-and-so. And that's good. I'm glad that, I should be praying for people. But one of the lessons we can learn from Paul is how specific he was. He knew that they were a loving church, but that they needed discernment and knowledge. They needed discernment and wisdom and knowledge to be growing along with them in their love. And so Paul prays this very specific prayer for them. And we can learn a great deal from this example. When you're praying for people, name specifics. If they need help getting a job, pray for that. If they need help because they're going through, they just had the stomach flu, pray for that. If they have a hard time getting along with their children or they're estranged from their children, pray for that. So pray specifically and pray with thankfulness and power. The other thing is, Paul is focused on the cause of Christ. Christ is his sole focus. All of his energy goes toward thinking about Christ, the gospel of Christ, and then telling people, confirming and defending the gospel and Christ. Confirming is what we do when someone already knows something. You think about if you're with believers, then you're confirming something that they already know and believe. And defending is what we do for people that do not believe. We defend the gospel. But it didn't matter. If Paul was with someone that was already a believer, he was confirming. If he was with someone that wasn't a believer, he was defending. But it didn't matter. It was going to be about the cause of Christ and the gospel of Christ anyway, no matter who he was with. The other thing is death has lost its sting. Paul says, to live is Christ and to die is gain. He says to die is actually better. Now, I'm not there yet. Maybe you're not there yet. But I think Paul had such a connection with Christ that he longed to be with Christ. If you have lost someone close to you and they have gone on to be with Jesus, then there might be times that you long to be with them and you long for death because you'll get to see them again. And you miss them so much. And it's hard. It's really hard to talk about. It's really hard to connect with that. But I think Paul had such a connection with Christ. And he loved him so much that he says to die is gain because I get to be with Christ. Like I said, I'm not there yet. But I think it's something that for us to think about. And when we think about death, as believers, death should not have the same sting as it does for the world, because we should think differently about death. As believers, and even in the States, we don't talk about death. In other countries and other cultures, death is a lot more, it's not as sanitary, and it's something that is talked about more. Maybe because in other places, death is a clear and present danger. For us, we live such sanitary lives and we really avoid the subject of death. But Paul does not. He does not avoid the subject of death. He says to die is gain. To live is Christ, to die is gain. So just think about that. These are the lessons that I have really been learning and thinking about in Philippians 1. I hope that you have gotten a lot out of this last week's study. Again, no video for tomorrow, but Monday we are going to hit the ground running, and you do not want to miss the videos that are coming up for this next week, because we are going to be diving deeply into chapter 2 and attitudes. Whew, it's going to be challenging. So we're going to be digging into attitudes and how we can change our attitudes and have the attitude of Christ as we move into chapter 2. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I love you guys, and I'll see you on Monday.